and welcome this week's episode of Strategy Honestly. This is a series where we try to describe the main tools and concepts used in strategy work and give some helpful tips what to use and when to use. My name is Janne, and with me I have Pyry and Pyry, and we will be the host.
And today we have a very special guest, Heidi. Heidi is here in Helsinki office and an analyst, and she's here to tell us about the SCP framework. Right, Heidi?
Yeah, and I guess why I'm here is that I was involved in a strategy engagement in the summer, and there I had to use actually this SCP analysis, and I found it quite hard to do. So what I did after the engagement is that I sparred with our colleagues here and then got some best practices and updated our guidelines for strategy training program on how to use this tool.
Right, and when I read Heidi's write-up, I realized that although this framework sounds like it's very easy, I mean basically its name says what to do, it's actually not so easy to do in practice, and also it takes a lot of work. So we invited Heidi here to share us some practical tips.
Okay, great. So we get some practical tips from someone who knows or who learned this on the hard way. This sounds really good.
Yeah, and SCP, structure, conduct, and performance, that actually links quite nicely into Porter's 5 forces, which we had on the prior episode. In case you missed that, we left a link here in this video.
All right, Heidi, share your wisdom with us.
Yeah. So, like Pyry said, the framework actually connects nicely with other strategic frameworks, such as the Porter's 5 forces. And what the SCP analysis is essentially about is the industry dynamics and also a little bit about the competitive landscape as well. So, if we start with S, which stands for structure, it means the industry structure. So, basically, it's the industry structure and then also the players in the field, and for example the size distribution of those players and so on. Then C stands for conduct, which means basically the strategy of those companies in the field and how do they work and how do they compete. And then P stands for performance, which means basically financial performance of those companies in the industry as a group. And what you need to remember with this framework is that structure drives conduct, which then drives performance. And the framework looks like this.
Whoa, this sounds something that should be done in every strategy study. But is this everything? Should there be something else?
I think there definitely needs to be something else. I think first of all, industries are never static. So you need to have a kind of time dimension here. And second, what I'm thinking is that in a lot of industries there might be an industry disruption, some external element affecting into the industry and then the internal dynamics, right?
Yeah, you're completely right. I think you've been reading my notes on this. So how it actually goes is that this framework that I just shared is the static version of the SCP analysis for stable industries. But of course we can extend the framework and then it's used for these dynamic situation and dynamic industries where you have some kind of external event or shock that changes things.
All right, so let's say we have an industry with a disruption. How do we actually use this framework in that case?
Yeah, well, how you go about that is that you divide the framework into 2 parts. You have the before situation and the after situation. And then you need to fill in the structure, conduct, and performance for the before and after situations. And you also have to define what the external event has been or what the shock has been. And then the framework looks like this.
Looks like this framework easily gets full of text. In the first episode we were talking about SWOT analysis, and the problems with that framework was that it was really difficult to draw synthesis from the framework. Do we have the same problem with this?
Well, let me share my experience here. So what I did in the strategy engagement is that first I did a desktop study on the industry that I was doing research on, and then filled in initially the framework. And then I used that initially filled in framework with industry experts. So I had a lot of discussions with different experts in the industry. And then from those discussions I could refine the insights that I already had on the framework, but also keep adding things there. So really what I learned there is that this isn't a desktop study. You can obviously use your desktop study as something like for initial ideas, but then you actually do have to talk to a lot of people that are experts in the industry. And the other learning here is that you do need to understand the connection between structure, conduct, and performance.
Makes sense. I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah, in the past we were very critical of the SWOT analysis, but this structure, conduct, and performance, although it is tedious and it has a lot of text, is actually something that we do like to have in the final strategy document for the simple reason that it provides some context. The other thing that one might say here is that the journey is worth taking it. I mean, basically, while you do this analysis and you go through this framework, you go through all the interviews, all those discussions, you actually build a lot of insights into the industry. And that happens not only to the individual doing the analysis, but actually everybody that's involved. So from that perspective, this can be a very worthwhile analysis to have.
And I think that's one of the reasons why pros do use this tool. I think, as Heidi, you said, I agree with the idea that you need multiple different views to kind of complete this framework, if it ever can be completed, actually. But I think also what this serves is, it's a wonderful discussion piece to kind of lay out there and start a discussion.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And it's really actually a fun analysis to do. You just put some ideas on the framework and then you can toss it onto a coffee table and talk with people about it. And then when you talk with people about it, you get different views and you actually get a pretty good view on the industry dynamics and the structure there.
And it's a nice tool. And I think what I do want to emphasize still is that it's not a tool that you do by yourself and then put onto the drawer and then that's it.
Yeah.
I think it definitely needs a setup where there's a team, and when you iterate that tool and you basically leverage team-based problem solving, right?
And team-based problem solving is actually the topic of a future episode. Meanwhile, if you like this episode, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, and also put on your alerts so you don't miss the upcoming episodes. And if you like our musings, please go to Reddal.com. You will find more writings on strategy and business building over there.
All right, guys, stay sharp, stay critical, and when doing strategy, remember to drive fact-based insights and recommendations. Until next time, cheers.
Cheerio.
Cheers.